Over the past 5 days, we've been looking for a likely bounce out of this 105,000 US dollar range for Bitcoin to the upside, with Bitcoin hitting actually just under $112,000 yesterday. And in today's video, I do want to provide a little bit more guidance as to what's likely to happen in the short term as a few more signals do start to emerge, how that changes, or if it changes at all, the greater picture, and just major traps to be watchful and mindful of. Before we get into it though, I do want to say a massive heartfelt thank you for all of the well wishes for yesterday's marriage ceremony between myself and Elsa. It's been absolutely amazing. It really does feel like a lot of people here in this community are family as well, and it was just, you know, a very tight-knit family ceremony, so it was really, really beautiful. And I just want to let you know that after Elsa went through all of the comments, she really went through all of the comments, like tears are like streaming down her face. It really meant a lot, and I just want to say a massive thank you for that. It's been truly amazing. Anyways, let's get into what you're actually here for, which is some good old Bitcoin's price action analysis. And let's start it off with, as always, some daily price action statistics. Tuesday, basically a coin flip probability is whether it's likely to close positively or negatively since this bull market began. Slight favor in negative closures, to be fair, but as always, we're most interested in the average percent gain and the average percent loss. The average percent loss is about 1.73%, and to be fair, we've actually already seen that move to the downside, as that would have been a price point of about 108,707. So if you're looking for the bounce play that typically happens when these levels are hit, it's already happened here. Yes, there could be another sort of scalp opportunity if you do have this indicator. Maybe if Bitcoin comes down a little bit lower, let's say closer to like 106.5 intraday here, perhaps you do get a bounce coming into the end of the day. But if you're looking for that easy play, that easy scalp, it's already happened here, as my damn phone goes crazy in the background. And of course, we've seen several of these yet again happen over the weekend in the past few days. You can see both Sunday and Monday hitting up to the top side of the average turns range highs and then getting a nice little scalp move back down as Bitcoin closes in range. So again, if you're looking for those quick daily scalps, I think that this script right here is just, it's super fucking powerful. It is the historical price action statistics indicator, which is a part of Caretaker's indicator suite, which is in the teachable link in the description below. It's a fucking mouthful. Probably should make it a little bit easier for people to just jump on in there. And yes, you can get 7 days free trial. So again, if you are a more short-term time frame scalper, I think that this is just a beautiful tool to be at least referencing. Moving on from there, we can get into perhaps everyone's favorite or perhaps most controversial chart, which is the moon charts. And they fired off yet again. Traditionally, the bearish moon, or the moon that, you know, generally precedes some downside price action, has fired off yet again as of last night. And the past 3 of them actually have had some decent moves to the downside. If we start off with this one here, from high to low, this one did produce almost a 7% move to the downside. The one that followed that one did produce about an 8.5% move to the downside. And the most latest one did produce about almost 8% move to the downside from high to low again. So, you know, looking at that doesn't mean that all of them are going to, you know, be working out perfectly. In fact, the one that preceded all of that was a tremendous failure. So, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not saying that this is guaranteed to go down, but it does present the sort of backdrop for just not being necessarily bullish during this next 2 weeks period, just statistically speaking. Anyways, if we were to see a similar return on this particular new moon right here, then what would 8% off the current price action look like? That'd put Bitcoin somewhere down around 102,500 US dollars, what I'm trying to say. Yes, there we go. Now, I do want to state that this is a number that will show up again later in this video, so keep that one in the back of your mind's eye. I'm going to take a sip of this water while you marinate on these thoughts. Just one moment, I do apologize. Oh man. All right, now let's go into some of our more lower term time frame charts, looking at the 12-hour RSI here for Bitcoins. And on the 12-hour RSI, we actually do see that there is hidden bearish divergence here on yesterday's high, and that would be a lower high alongside higher highs on the RSI oscillator. So we do have hidden bearish divergence confirmed, and generally speaking, I'm going to be looking for a move back down around those lows that we saw priorly. So that would be somewhere around 105.5-ish, somewhere around there. Kind of makes sense. Again, as long as Bitcoin is below yesterday's high, which is just under 112,000 US dollars. That does mean that essentially gets invalidated if Bitcoin does pop back above this high right here, again 112 or so, and if it can close back above there, I just would be looking for a general bounce back up. Let's call it 116 to 118 region. Somewhere around there would make a lot of sense. But until that happens, downside is a very, very likely direction, and somewhere back down around in this, let me just print out a nice little red circle right here, is probably the name of the game. Now, do I think that Bitcoin's going to fully break down from there? unlikely, at least on the next pass. I still think that a bounce, like a greater bounce into a bull trap, is more likely, even if you're the biggest bear or the biggest bull, which would imply, just a generally decent bounce, perhaps into the mid or even deep teens for Bitcoin. But, in the short term, is it more likely to come back down? Yeah, it's more likely to come back down alongside some of our other indications as well. If we go over here and check out our stochastic momentum oscillators, we can see, starting off with the daily time frame, that things are still very much angled to the downside here. Starting with CME, it is going to be showing downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's below 110,500, looking, somewhat likely for today at least. 2-day time frame is going to continue down quite harshly as well, and also again continue to play out the same trendline regression here that it's been living within since May of this year, actually, as long as Bitcoin's below 122,700. So I think that's a little bit unlikely Bitcoin reclaims that number by the end of today. Maybe it's possible, but I think it's very low probability. The 3-day time frame, which just closed last night, is also continuing down here as long as Bitcoin's below almost 120,000 US dollars. The 5-day time frame also continuing down here after fully losing control of that bullish control zone as long as Bitcoin's below 119, so on and so forth. We don't really even need to go much higher than this, but weekly is going to be showing the same thing. Bi-weekly is going to be showing the same thing. And as you already know, the monthly is showing the same shit as well. So all of these things and more do align with a more sort of corrective period here for Bitcoin. I think that the people, on social media who are talking about one last dip and this is your last chance and all of this stuff, I don't see it right now myself, especially as long as Bitcoin is below just 120,000 US dollars. Again, my rule is when all of the higher term time frame stochastic momentum oscillators are angled in a similar direction, don't bet on the opposite direction happening. You don't necessarily have to bet on that direction that they're currently positioned in happening, but I would definitely not be betting in the quite literal opposite of that happening. At best, maybe sideways, which, to be fair, would not be that bad for Bitcoin. But seeing as we do have all of these signals in the background, I do want to entertain the possibility that Bitcoin does head a little bit lower first and perhaps does actually still put in a higher low. I mean, keep in mind, Bitcoin has higher lows here on the macro as long as you're above about 75,000 US dollars. It's got a lot of room here to wiggle, to be fair, and still maintain that beautiful structure long term. But again, for the the short term people, you might get fucked. It's possible you might get fucked. It's just the name of the game. But as we go forwards from there, I do want to bring up several more setups that are now starting to coalesce in the background. Some of them you're probably quite familiar with, so we don't need to go through the full rigmarole with them, but I do want to update on them. And of course, here is that traditional setup that we've been referencing many times over the past few months now, between the red moving average and the yellow moving average. When the red moving average crosses the underside of the yellow moving average, it generally gets a beautiful and very high probability corrective move at minimum down to the green moving average. And we can see that for the 4-day time frame now for CME, which, by the way, for spot, this one already happened, but for CME now it is occurring as well. And we got the same sort of shit going on here as well. Well, that one is just really a couple days away from firing off. And I do think that this is more or less a formality, especially as long as Bitcoin's below 112, which again is that last lower high on the 12-hour time frame, which did have hidden bearish divergence. This will inevitably happen in the next 2 days. And yes, that green moving average is all the way down at 102. That number sounds familiar now, doesn't it? So that would be a minimum corrective target. That means that Bitcoin could wick below it like we saw over here, or like we saw over here, or like we saw over here. But it is a very high probability target. In fact, anytime that we've seen this signal happen on CME throughout CME's full history, which admittedly is not that long, but it is there. It's always gotten that minimum corrective move down. By the way, we're using the Quant Prime service to back test this. This is one of the beautiful things that I love about the Quant Prime service. It allows me to just test out simple ideas and actually very complex ideas as well, and get data on it very, very quickly. This is a setup that I would not play actually on a trading account, but it is really, really good for YouTube directional analysis, which is what we're doing right now. So yes, that does give me a general downside bias for Bitcoin to fulfill this target at some point, basically meaning that I would not be betting on Bitcoin making new all-time highs first before at least correcting down to this target. But here's the thing, the 4-day time frame naturally leads directly into the 5-day time frame, and the 5-day time frame is going to be closing in 3 days. And I can almost guarantee you that if Bitcoin is below 111,000 US dollars by the end of that period, you will absolutely see these two moving averages cross. And why is this significant? Because that 55 EMA, the green moving average, is even lower. It's all the way down at about 98,000 US dollars. So now we start to come up with areas of interest, basically, for this next drop off, assuming that happens first rather than a bounce. But again, bounce is confirmed, or greater bounce confirmed if Bitcoin can just, again, trade back above yesterday's high, 112, especially close like a 12-hour or especially a daily above there. That looked pretty good for a continuation of that bounce. But until that happens, the corrective targets are looking a lot more likely. And again, we've seen these happen perfectly throughout all of CME's history. And then I believe, the weekly time frame probably going to be riding on the back of that one. That one won't close until Friday as well. And if that one does basically close anywhere below 111, then guess what? It's same sort of downside target around $98,000. And then that can obviously bleed into, even higher term timeframes than that. But for right now, it is looking to me like Bitcoin will get another swipe to the downside, and somewhere around 98,000 to like 101, 102 seems quite likely. Again, you might get wicks lower. That's fine. We just don't want to see, actually, yeah. I mean, you could see a legitimate reversal. I mean, that is obviously possible. But if you are looking for a corrective target, that would be it, and that still would be a macro higher low compared to those April lows of $74,000. So I do think that warrants a lot of consideration. What I'm basically trying to say is that, hey, if you are the biggest bull out there in the world, which I don't necessarily agree with right now, but if you are the biggest bull out there in the world, you're probably at least looking for a corrective period to bring us at least sideways for a while, I think at best. Again, I could negate this in the short term with, a bounce up higher towards 118 or so if Bitcoin were to take out this last 112 high. But again, that is, quite far away from right now. And while I do think that Bitcoin isn't necessarily going to completely shit the bed here before having a decent bounce, I do want to outline the possibility for an even greater correction as well, because we are slowly but surely witnessing another major cross. This one we have not spoken about actually on this channel. And actually someone in the Discord, I want to give credit to the person who brought this up in Discord. This really bothers me when I don't give credit where credit is due. It was Luckmaker in Discord, and he called this one out, and I gave it a look over, and I could not agree more with him. And it is this: the 2-day time frame here for Bitcoin has a nice interplay between the yellow and the green moving averages. Whenever we see these cross the downside, we get a beautiful correction, well, beautiful depending upon your opinion, to this white moving average, which is the 200 EMA, pretty much every time over the past 8 years. I mean, probably even beyond there as well. But we'll go through a few of these iterations for you. We can see this one in 2024. Boom, crosses the downside. It spends its time. It's not like a direct shot down to that white moving average, but yeah, it gets there. And until that is fulfilled, we ain't doing anything significant to the upside. Same thing over here. You get the crossover, boom, takes another like month and a half or 2 months, but yeah, you get that test down over there as well. Same shit over here, same shit over here, same shit over here, so on and so forth. You already get the idea. So in this particular case, why I'm calling this one out right now is because guess what? These two moving averages getting very fucking close to crossing. And if that does happen, that white moving average is where? About $97,000. So we have several targets now aligning lower around these regions. And I do think that, with the addict influence of all of these, that just makes it more and more likely to happen. So ultimately, it's not a guarantee, but I do think that you do have a high probability move there. The question in my mind is, how does this more or less play out? Do we see Bitcoin, make one more stab at these lows, then bounce, then down? Do we see Bitcoin just go down and then wick back up into here and then perhaps do something like this? Or, do we see a real reversal and Bitcoin, actually does head down for a long time? It's possible as well, I suppose. But first things first, I would still be betting on the macro trend. I am open to this market cycle being over. I do believe that if you believe that the 4-year cycle is valid, then you should be looking at the market cycle is already over. You should be looking at that's 126,000 high for Bitcoin as being the all-time high for Bitcoin, or the high for this cycle for Bitcoin, and it should be down only for about the next year and a half, whatever it ends up being. I'm not of that opinion just yet. I'm certainly open to it, but I just want to see a macro downtrend first. That's all I want to see. Okay. And then I'll be happy to get very, very bearish. I do think that there's downside here. But I would still keep open, still be open for some upside hopium. I mean, this doesn't really look like a macro high to me as it stands, but hey, crazier things have happened. Anyways, back into my notes over here. Just want to make sure that I've hit everything that I wanted to hit. Boom, boom, boom. Yep. We got all of that. Okay. Beautiful. Whoops, just drawing lines now. And again, if Bitcoin takes out that 112 high, I'd be looking for a move at least to 118. at least 115 for sure, but 118 I think it would be extremely high probability, maybe even all the way to 120. That's where I'm going to start to question myself. Okay, is this going to be a lower high, or is this going to be just straight shot back up? No. We'll revisit that one if and when we get there. But I do want to go over some traditional markets as well. Let's see what SPY's doing. SPY, again, basically putting in yet again another higher low. It's like crazy, just continues to go up and to the right. So that also gives me a little bit of hopium here for Bitcoin. With traditional markets just keeping it up, more or less at the all-time highs. This one is really not far away from all-time highs yet again. And NASDAQ futures, which are probably even more, or they certainly are more correlated to Bitcoin, are more or less at all-time highs with today's high. It is just a smidgen below there. So very, 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 very close. And as long as these things are within uptrends, should I be looking for a macro downturn on Bitcoin to occur? Personally, no. I wouldn't. But of course, if NDX is going to reject here or actually reverse here, I mean, this would be the place to do it from, I guess. But it won't be confirmed until you come back down below yesterday's low very specifically. So that's just under 25,000 US dollars, or 24,955 and 3/4. If you see that, basically below yesterday's low, okay, yeah, there does appear to be, a bit of a rejection going on here that actually holds weight and holds meaning, and we should be looking for a sizable downside move. But until then, I'd still give the rose-colored glasses to Bitcoin. Just because, we typically see these things move hand in hand. Of course, people who are looking at gold are going to be, or looking at Bitcoin as correlated to gold, which hasn't really been correlated to gold, especially in recent times, as, hey, well, gold's topping, so Bitcoin should top as well. Maybe that holds true. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that gold is really starting to show some toppy behaviors here now. We are starting to see major bearish divergences on higher term timeframes. And while I do still think there might be one more stab up, this rally is tired. This rally is tired, and I think at best going into a sideways consolidation very, very soon. I mean, look at the volatility reads on the daily right here. This just does not happen too often. And when it does, we're typically looking at, a long-term consolidation. Again, consolidation could lead towards further continuation. It's possible, like we saw over here in April. April's traded sideways for the next, 4 months until August. And then, it led towards continuation. So it's not like a death signal or anything like that. It could be, but at least, is this going to be a short-term or medium-term top here? Yeah, I do think so. You're going to trade sideways and down. Maybe it tries for another high later on. But anyways, that's it for today's video. We'll be back on with another live stream analysis again tomorrow. Again, I want to say a massive, seriously a massive thank you for all of the well wishes yesterday. It was truly amazing. Really did make our day even more special. So thank you for that. We'll be back on, like I said, with another live stream analysis tomorrow. Very much looking forward to that. It's becoming my most pleasurable thing to do, or one of them, besides sex whores. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. It's about the sex whores and it's about the live streams. Indeed, my friends. Just kind of wrapping this up for one last second. My question right now would be, does Bitcoin make a slightly new low and then bounce? Does it just kind of, come back down to 105, 106 and then bounce? Or does it just go all the way down to 98 and then bounce? I don't really know, but all of those areas are of significance, and I would generally be looking for all of them to get hit. The question is, in what order do they get hit? If I had to guess right now, based off of those lower term time frame momentum signals, probably going to see at least 105, 106 tested first. Maybe we see a bounce there and then it comes down. We will update on this as we get more puzzle pieces put in place. But for right now, I think that's going to accurately summarize, what we're, essentially what we're looking for here. And other than that, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.